Have you ever looked at a massive tech giant and just wished you had a time machine? Well, welcome to this explainer. Today, we're doing exactly that. We're going to rewind the clock to unpack the extraordinary growth of a company you already know really well, NVIDIA, by building out a scenario to see just how powerful the right technological revolution can actually be.
Okay, let's dive into this. I want you to actually picture yourself exactly a decade ago. You're sitting at your laptop, you pull up your brokerage account, and you decide to buy some shares of NVIDIA. But you don't bet the farm, right? You decide to make a very specific, incredibly small investment, just $100. At the time, clicking that buy button probably wouldn't have felt like a life-changing decision. It was just a small, everyday tech investment.
I mean, we're not talking about dropping a grand. We're not talking about $10,000. Literally just $100. The cost of a decent dinner out, or maybe a couple of video games. It's an amount of money that a lot of people might spend without even thinking twice about it. We are looking at a starting point so incredibly small that the eventual gains are almost difficult to wrap your head around. So if you had locked that $100 away in NVIDIA stock and just totally forgot about it for a full decade, what could that exact same investment buy you today? Are we talking about enough profit to grab a brand new smartphone? Would it be enough to go down to a dealership and put a down payment on a car? Or are we looking at something much, much bigger? Just keep that in the back of your mind. Section 1. A gaming hardware company. So 10 years ago, NVIDIA specialized in GPUs, graphics processing units. At the time, these chips were mostly known by PC gamers building out their rigs. But here is the absolutely crucial technical insight. To render those fast-moving graphics, GPUs are designed to handle thousands of tiny calculations all at exactly the same time. It's called parallel processing. And as it turns out, that exact capability, doing thousands of simple math problems simultaneously, is exactly the kind of muscle required to power a neural network. It made their future pivot feel almost like destiny, even though back then, to Wall Street, it was literally just another gaming stock. And this brilliantly illustrates the shift. 10 years ago, NVIDIA was primarily a niche gaming hardware company. Today, they are the engine powering AI, self-driving cars, and the world's most advanced robotics. It's just a stark night and day contrast between how investors initially viewed the company and the profound technological force it has become today. They were literally building the hardware of the future, but the rest of the world just hadn't quite caught on yet.
Section 2. The catalyst. The AI revolution. So, how did we get here? First, artificial intelligence suddenly breaks onto the scene, moving from theory to reality in a very real, meaningful way. Second, because of this massive shift, global tech companies suddenly found themselves needing enormous, unprecedented amounts of computing power to train these complex neural networks. And third, because of that parallel processing we were just talking about, NVIDIA happened to make the absolute most important hardware for the job. They were perfectly positioned at the exact second the world changed. Man, as the demand for that computing power surged, the AI effect created this runaway snowball effect on NVIDIA's financials. Their business absolutely exploded. Revenue steadily climbed and profits soared because their chips basically became the gold standard for data centers all around the globe. Naturally, as those numbers rolled in, investors rushed to buy up shares. The momentum in the market shifted completely, and NVIDIA was right at the center of it all. Let's move to Section 3 and see how this builds. The growth explosion.
All right, let's look at the timeline. It starts with that really simple initial $100 tech investment 10 years ago. Then, moving into the mid-decade, those AI breakthroughs create a sudden, massive surge in demand. That demand generates higher revenue year over year, which continually pulls in more investors, pushing the stock price higher and higher over time. And that leads us to today, where that small, seemingly insignificant investment has transformed into something genuinely extraordinary.
Which brings us to section 4, the big reveal. How much is it actually worth?
Okay, let's pause for a second. Depending on your exact purchase date and, factoring in how compounding and stock splits physically multiply the number of shares you own over the years, that initial $100 investment made a decade ago would be worth several $1,000s today. From $100 to several thousand. A single, crisp $100 bill completely transforming into thousands of dollars purely through the vehicle of corporate growth and time. No way, right? So the crucial point is, this isn't magic. It's the pure formula of long-term investing. It started with one simple decision. It required a full decade of patience. And yes, it was fueled by a remarkable technological revolution. It's really the combination of all three of these elements that takes a small sum of money and just completely supercharges it.
Section 5, the lesson of patience. Now, what's really interesting about this slide is the human psychology behind it all. Look, a lot of impatient investors bought in, but they panicked and sold way too early at the first sign of a dip, or they just ignored the opportunity completely because it seemed too risky. But the patient investors, they held their shares through the market corrections, through the recoveries, and through years of absolute uncertainty. And they are the ones who ultimately experienced that truly meaningful financial growth.
The greatest gains often belong to people willing to hold through uncertainty. I mean, let's be real, it is incredibly difficult to sit there, watch your stock portfolio bounce all over the place, and do absolutely nothing. But as we've seen in this explainer, the reward for weathering that psychological storm, it can be completely remarkable. To sum it all up, this kind of massive growth, it just doesn't happen overnight. Turning $100 into several thousand required a full decade of time. It demanded the discipline and patience to leave that money completely untouched. And honestly, above all else, it took a steadfast belief in innovation, really trusting that the technology they were building would eventually reshape the industry. So, I want to leave you with this final thought. We obviously know what happened 10 years ago. We've seen the data. But looking around at the technology being developed right now, at the labs and the startups all across the globe, what companies today could become the next NVIDIA? It's a fascinating question to chew on as you look toward your own future opportunities. Thanks so much for joining me for this explainer. Keep learning and keep your eyes peeled for that next big leap forward.